At its core, the reproductive justice framework is a human rights framework. And so people of faith ought to be concerned with anything that has to do with making sure that all human beings are endowed with the same rights across the board. In terms of reproductive justice, the right to have children, to not have children, and to raise any children that one does decide to have or already has in safe, equitable conditions. And so I think that it is imperative that people of faith be concerned about reproductive justice, be on the right side of reproductive justice, be advocating for reproductive justice, because it impacts all of us. We have all been children at one point. We all have had parents or other caregivers who were taking care of us and doing the best that they could with whatever resources that they may or may not have had. We sit in classrooms and in congregations every day with folks who are at the precipice of making really difficult decisions often about their own reproductive health. And everyone should be afforded with equal access to and equal opportunity to make the decisions that are right for themselves and their families, and to have access to equitable health care, to have access to resources. And so that's why I believe that reproductive justice matters to people of faith, and that people of faith should be involved in the reproductive justice movement. Faith values about equity, about care for all of creation, about justice, mercy, are all faith values that inform how people of faith do and should respond to concerns about the injustices related to reproductive decision making in our society. I believe that no matter what one's particular faith tradition is, there are some key or core tenets that I believe are threads that run throughout most of our faith traditions, and that is that human beings have inherent dignity and worth and should have bodily autonomy to make right decisions for their bodies and for their lives that are in alignment with healthy choices for them, both physically and emotionally. That people have the right to flourish and to make decisions that will allow for them to flourish in their lives. That folks have a right to be safe, and that the children and other family members that they may have in their care also have that right to live in safe communities and have their needs met, food and shelter, education, etc. So I think that the faith values, regardless if one identifies as Christian or Jewish or Unitarian or any of the other flavors of faith traditions that we have in our society, I think on one thing that we can agree, and that is the inherent dignity and worth of each and every human person, and the right that they have to have the same access as everyone else. Last year, I had the opportunity to present a workshop on reproductive justice in the Black church at a conference. And one of the things that I heard from folks in the audience was that as they were growing up, many of them in Black church spaces, they didn't have the language or the definition of reproductive justice, but they knew that the mothers of the church were the ones that took care of them related to this. And so for many of them, that meant that they were getting education, sometimes, behind the scenes or under the table about healthy sexuality that might have looked like someone passing them condoms or taking them to a Planned Parenthood clinic to get birth control pills. If they did have children, the village mentality was very present in their church, and so either when they were children themselves or when they had children later in life, that everybody participated in the life of the children in the church and making sure that they were safe and whole. And so what that brings up for me is that reproductive justice and faith have always been in concert and in conversation with one another. They're not mutually exclusive ways of being, so to speak, in the world or frameworks. Whether it's the mothers of our churches growing up, or the youth ministers that dare to talk to us about sex and sexuality, or the seminary professor who we felt comfortable coming out to, the pastors that have walked alongside us when perhaps we were dealing with having to make difficult reproductive decisions in our own lives. There's many, many, many examples that prove that faith and reproductive justice have always been interwoven, even when it wasn't sort of formalized or folks didn't necessarily have the language.